And we're back! After a 2-year hiatus, we're coming in hot with a Samurai Predator version 2, the Electric Boogaloo. Since the first did so well, I figured we could capitalize a bit more from the weeb community. That, and I just got to the Wano arc in One Piece, so I was feeling inspired. The idea here is, a predator lands during the Edo period in Japan, and quickly recognizes the samurai as the mightiest prey in the land. He then begins a year-long hunt against them and the shogunate, ultimately gaining him the title of Samurai Killer. A little whitewashing of history for ya. And with that being said, let's dive right into how this little guy actually came to be. Starting off with our base figures, we have a bootleg Tamashii Nations Iron Man, which I got from AliExpress for around 20 bucks. And after chopping him up, we're really only going to be using his bottom half. The rest doesn't really matter. On the Predator side of things, we're using the Alpha Predator that came out a few years back. And you guessed it, we're only going to be using his top half, not including the feet of course, because we can't go without those. All those pieces combined make up most of what we need to turn this Predator into a fully fledged samurai. But there's still a lot of prep work left to do before we can put things together. Just like my life. So starting from the top, we have the Predator's head. Now I wanted to go for a cyberpunk samurai kind of vibe, so I took the biomask from the Elder Predator figure and cut the seams right below the eyes, making for a perfect half mask reminiscent of a traditional Oni headgear. It actually turned out a lot better than I expected, with the only problem being the fit. Having the sculpted mandibles underneath make it look way too goofy, so we gotta get rid of those suckers too. We put on our dentist hat, but totally butchered the face.
Ugly motherfucker.
But it's nothing a half mask can't fix. And using some epoxy clay, we sculpt some smaller mandibles under the mask and glue it into place. But we're not done with the head just yet. He's still really exposed where it really counts, so using a cap from a solar garden light, I fashioned a pseudo-traditional hat. And since we're sticking to the cyberpunk theme for the head, rather than sculpting a wooden look, the rough texture it has, it's great for the metallic style I wanted to go for. Next up is the plasma caster, which I made by combining Iron Man's arm guns and Scar's caster from AVP, which makes for a slicker looking gun. The backpack itself is just flipped upside down with a small hole for the arm to attach. Simple but genius. As for the shoulder pads, I had some options. On his right side, I went for an older pad I didn't get to use in my previous samurai video, so we're gonna upcycle that. For his left, I went for a more traditional looking shoulder, which I put together using a PVC plastic sheet and some glue. It turned out a little bigger than what I needed, but that's a problem for future Alex. Moving on to the arms, we're actually going to be using Iron Man's legs, which, while big for him, are the perfect size for a Predator. The only prep work I had to do here was recentering the hole, which was just a matter of filling it up with some epoxy clay and re-drilling.
Perfect.
But of course, he wouldn't be a samurai without his katana, which the base sword is a full metal katana keychain from AliExpress. Now, I didn't realize, but it's literally Sora's sword from One Piece. Now, the prep work here was thinning out the handle and scraping up the blade like so. After all, Predators are known more for their strength than their samurai levels of finesse. We finish up by giving the blade an edge and move on to the rest. From here, we move on to his no-no square, where I had a little dilemma. I wanted to go for an abdominal wrap until I realized the waist armor wouldn't fit. So we're scrapping that and going for a simpler build. And for that, we just need to Dremel up some of the sculpted rope and use our own. To make our rope, we're going to be using some of this yarn, which by itself is way too thin, but when you double it, it makes the perfect rope. And to do that, we just use our Dremel. On the thigh side of things, we have to drill a peg hole where we'll attach these ball jointed Under Armour pieces that came with Iron Man. Now, I had to get a little creative for the leg pieces. At first, I tried sculpting them on top of the original, but they turned out like crap. So I ended up taking a month's break until I remembered I had a half mold leg armor from my previous Predator build. Now, it's only a mold of the front, but by using clay instead of resin, I'm able to stamp on the main sculpt, add a peg hole for the leg, and come out with a perfect shape. The great thing about this method is how easy it is to manipulate the pre-sculpted clay into an opposite leg. Things come out exceptionally well as far as size and looks go. So, with all the pieces prepped, we're ready to move on to painting, which is arguably the hardest, most annoying yet rewarding aspect of any build. Yes, I hate painting. That being said, I really try to simplify things for myself. Rather than going for the airbrush, we go to Home Depot, where I picked out a base red color for the armor. I ended up spraying 3 coats because 3 times the charm, and moved on to the highlights, which were purple instead of the boring blue from last time. I was a little worried about how it was going to turn out, but the finished product proved me wrong. After that, we move on to a black wash, which really meant to douse the whole thing, but I went in for a more detailed approach. Did it make a difference? Not really, but it was worth a shot. After that, we seal things up with varnish and move on. Ironically, the mask was the only thing that needed masking as far as painting went. We're going for a red and silver color scheme, keeping in line with the cyber elements. The plasma caster is a bit more extravagant and gets a gold paint job. And the black wash. Everything is getting a black wash, but the black on the gold is what really makes it shine. We seal it with varnish and move on to the thighs and knees. They're getting the universal black treatment with a purple sakura detailing. I tried making a stamp to speed up the process, but it looked messy as hell, so I ended up doing it one petal at a time. And the final product looks great. But the problem with adding so much detailing to the leg area is how quickly it rubs off when posing, so we gotta be extra careful when doing so. With all our pieces painted, we can move on to assembly. And again, from the top, we got the hat, which needs a little more prep work. I know, I lied. So using the Dremel, we drill 2 holes for the rope and tie it up. Down at the waist, we glue down the armor and the double rope we made for it. Now, I'll be honest, I totally winged the knot, so don't ask me how I got it to look right.
Oh, okay. That turned out pretty okay. I'm surprised.
And speaking of which, I added some more rope to his upper chest, which makes it look like it's holding up the shoulder pads, adding a little bit of realism to the thing. Moving down, we have his cock. He's got a giant ball joint, and if we want it to fit, we're gonna have to heat things up. So, using the power of conduction, we have to do just that.
I like what they did with that.
It helps, but just barely.
Fucking sweating.
From there, we add our under armor for protection. Back at the top, we use some contact cement and attach the right shoulders, leaving the more fragile left for the very end. Down at the legs, we run into a little issue. You see, the lack of flexibility from the clay really compromises the whole joint, which is exactly what happened when I was putting it together. Too much pressure meant it broke. It's not a hard fix, but there's another issue. The knee joint was connecting too far back, so I had to recenter the hole, twice, for both legs. After that fiasco, we're free to attach the legs to the torso, which is a matter of popping the thighs into place. But now that all the obtrusive pieces have been assembled, we can safely put on that left shoulder pad, which has a little epoxy underneath for extra surface. At the belt, we have a tiny katana, a metal hook and smart disc, and this piece is salvaged while making the katanas, which looks a lot like a crest of a helmet, so we'll say it's just that. We burn off the fluff and finish things off with a little trophy. Just your everyday skull and spine tied to a rope. It's honestly the cherry on top and a great way to end things. So with that, let's get a closer look at the finished product. But now that we have all the beauty shots out of the way, let's go take a look at his articulation. And since it's a custom, he is going to be a bit restricted. Especially on this arm, which has our extra large shoulder pad. Yep, it's my problem now. So let's go ahead and take that off for now. And obviously, this arm would have full range if it wasn't for the shoulder pad. As for the other side, we actually get a pretty good range of motion. Nothing is really hindered and we still get our double jointed elbow. Down below, we have a little problem with the leg. I might have drilled it a little bit too much, so it doesn't actually stay in place. Unless I'm trying to show you how easily it falls off. In that case, it won't move an inch. Below the waist, he's actually really posable. He has his double jointed knees, which I was afraid were gonna get scratched up when it came to posing, but no, they're doing okay. All that varnish helped out. Now a surprising effect of the heating method, his abdomen became way too tight, almost impossible to make him turn. But for now, it doesn't bug me too much. His head movement's also restricted. I know, it's a running theme with this. But that shoulder pad is really fucking things up. The plasma caster doesn't help, but it doesn't hinder it too much either. As for the accessories, these are the kind of things I picture him coming with. First off, we have a golden smart disc, which fits like this. Then we have some black wrist blades, which I don't know what they're really meant to be, but you know, maybe like some assassin daggers, assassin knives. And of course, we can't forget our katana, which is a little heavy. So as far as holding it goes, it's not very elegant, but then again, it doesn't need to be. And of course our plasma caster, which yes, I do consider an accessory, and folds up nicely like this. And we're going to be borrowing the spear / lance thing from the broken tusk predator, which looks pretty samurai to me. And lastly, we have our hat, which is optional, but extremely necessary if you want to complete the look. Now, I actually ended up repainting the inside of this guy gold to further go with that color scheme we have going on. Those are all our accessories, but before we leave, here's a quick look of him next to my samurai predator, which I did a few years back. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. You're amazing and your parents love you, don't forget that. And thanks to all the people who subscribed in my absence. As much as I love to keep gaining subs passively, I think it's time to be proactive. So, subscribe for much more, and stay poochy everybody.